Velnara stood in the observation deck of the Coalition flagship and watched the stars drift past. Her scaled hands rested behind her back, the way every Quillarian officer stood when thinking. For 800 years her people had protected the galaxy. They had never lost a war. They had never known defeat. Today, everything felt different. The council chamber doors opened behind her. Admiral Krethzon walked out, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. He looked tired. "The vote is final," he said. "The humans are joining the Coalition military forces." Velnara's throat sac vibrated with disapproval. Humans. The primitives from the edge of the galaxy. They had barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most species needed 500 years to reach that point. The humans had rushed through it like children playing with fire. "They are too young," Velnara said. "Too reckless." "The Void Swarm does not care about age," Krethzon replied. "We need every soldier we can find, even human ones." The Void Swarm. Velnara's scales tightened at the thought. The insectoid monsters had consumed 17 star systems in 2 months. Nothing stopped them. They just kept coming, wave after wave, eating everything in their path. Planets, ships, people. "When do they arrive?" Velnara asked. "They are already here, and you are assigned to coordinate with their commander." Velnara turned sharply. "Me? Admiral? I am a combat officer, not a babysitter for—" "That is an order, Commander." Krethzon's voice cut through her protest. "The humans insisted on working with our best. That is you. Report to Docking Bay 7 in 1 hour." The Admiral walked away, leaving Velnara alone with her anger. 1 hour later, Velnara entered Docking Bay 7. 3 human ships had attached to the flagship. They were ugly vessels, covered in strange markings and painted in dull gray colors. No elegance, no beauty, just metal boxes with engines. A group of humans stood near the airlock. Velnara approached slowly, studying them. They looked so fragile. Soft skin that would tear easily, thin bones that would break under pressure, small bodies that seemed too weak to carry weapons. How did these creatures survive on their own planet? One of them stepped forward. He was male, with dark hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform with 4 stripes on his shoulder. "Commander Velnara?" he asked in surprisingly good Galactic Common. "I am," she replied. "Captain Teho, commanding officer of the Human Auxiliary Force." He extended his hand. Velnara looked at the hand. She had read about this human custom. She reached out and gripped his hand briefly. It felt warm, weak. She could crush every bone in it without effort. "Your squadron is assigned to my division," Velnara said. "I will need your tactical data, ship specifications, and troop numbers by tomorrow." "Of course." Teho nodded to another human. "This is Lieutenant Haewon, our medical officer, and Sergeant Dong Hyun, infantry commander." Haewon was a female with short hair and steady hands. She smiled, which Velnara found unsettling. How could anyone smile when the Void Swarm was destroying the galaxy? Donghyun was older, with scars on his face and arms that showed through his uniform. He looked at Velnara with an expression she could not read. Not fear, not respect, something else. "We should discuss combat doctrine," Teho said. "Our methods may be different from yours." "Combat doctrine is universal," Velnara replied. "You maintain formation, you preserve your forces, you retreat when necessary. These principles have won wars for thousands of years." Something passed between the 3 humans. A look, a shared understanding. It made Velnara uncomfortable. "May we show you something?" Teho asked. He led them to a briefing room. A holographic display activated, showing a battle scenario. Velnara recognized it as a simulation of a Void Swarm attack on a colony. "Standard coalition response," Teho said. "Form defensive perimeter. Hold for 30 minutes. Evacuate high-value assets. Retreat when casualties reach 15%. Correct, Velnara said. Why waste soldiers when the battle cannot be won? Teho changed the display. Human response. Form defensive perimeter. Send fast attack teams into enemy formation. Disrupt their command structure. Hold the line until every civilian is evacuated or every soldier is dead. Velnara stared at the simulation. That is suicide. You would lose 80% of your forces. Yes, Teho said simply. That makes no tactical sense. It makes perfect sense if the goal is saving civilians, not preserving the military. Velnara's scales rippled with frustration. A military that destroys itself cannot protect anyone in the next battle. Donghyun spoke for the first time. His voice was rough, like grinding stones. We have a saying on Earth. The fight you lose by not fighting is the only true defeat. That is primitive thinking, Velnara said. Maybe. Donghyun smiled, showing his teeth. It was not a friendly expression. But we are still here, and many of our enemies are not. The briefing continued for another hour. Velnara learned about human tactics which made no sense, acceptable casualties, last stands, scorched earth policies, kamikaze attacks. The translator struggled with some of the terms because no other species had words for these concepts. When the meeting ended, Velnara returned to her quarters. She sat on her sleeping platform and tried to understand what she had seen. Humans were either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. They had no honor. Quilarian warriors fought with dignity. They lived to fight another day. Survival was everything. But humans seemed to think survival was just one option among many. Velnara accessed her console and pulled up human files. The Coalition had basic information about Earth. One planet, 7 billion humans, hundreds of nations, thousands of languages, and they had spent their entire history fighting each other. Wars, endless wars, for land, for resources, for ideas, for gods. They had created weapons designed to burn cities, weapons that could poison entire continents, weapons that could destroy their own world, and they had come very close to using those weapons several times. Velnara felt something cold move through her body. These humans were not primitives. They were survivors of something far worse than the Void Swarm. They were survivors of themselves. A message appeared on her console. It was from Captain Teho. Commander, thank you for the briefing. I look forward to fighting alongside you. I believe we can learn much from each other. Velnara did not reply immediately. She looked out at the stars and thought about what fighting alongside humans might mean. Her people had never known defeat because they had always been careful, calculated, logical. But the Void Swarm was not logical, and maybe fighting an illogical enemy required illogical soldiers. She typed a response. Captain, I hope you are right. But deep inside, where she kept her true thoughts, Velnara felt something she had not experienced in many years. Fear. Not fear of the Void Swarm. Fear of what she might become if she fought like a human. The alarm woke Velnara from a light sleep. Red lights flashed across her quarters. The Void Swarm had been detected. She dressed in her combat armor within seconds and ran to the command center. Captain Teho was already there, looking at tactical displays with his human crew. Kepler 442b, Admiral Krethzone announced. Mining colony. Population 8,000. The swarm arrived 20 minutes ago. Velnara studied the screen. 6 swarm ships, maybe 10,000 warriors. The colony had minimal defenses. Standard evacuation protocol, the Admiral continued. We hold the primary evacuation point for 30 minutes. Get as many civilians out as possible. Then we retreat. All of them? Teho asked. The Admiral's eyes blinked slowly. No, we will save approximately 60%, maybe 70% if we are fortunate. And the rest? The rest will die. That is war, Captain. Teho said nothing, but Velnara saw his jaw tighten. 30 minutes later, Velnara's unit landed on Kepler 442b. The colony was already burning. Swarm warriors moved through the streets like a plague, cutting down everything that moved. Velnara positioned her troops at the evacuation point, a large plaza near the spaceport. Civilians ran toward them, screaming and crying. The Quilarian soldiers formed a defensive line, firing at the advancing swarm with precise shots. The human unit deployed on the eastern perimeter. Velnara watched them through her tactical display. They moved differently than coalition forces, faster, more aggressive. Human unit, maintain defensive position, Velnara ordered through the comm. Acknowledged, Tejo replied. For 15 minutes, the battle followed standard procedure. The coalition forces held their ground. The swarm attacked, but could not break through. Civilians boarded evacuation ships in an orderly manner. Then the eastern perimeter collapsed. Velnara saw it happen on her display. A massive swarm warrior, bigger than the others, smashed through a building. 20 more warriors followed it. They would reach the evacuation point in minutes. Eastern perimeter falling back, a coalition officer reported. Recommending immediate retreat, Velnara calculated quickly. If they retreated now, maybe 4,000 civilians would escape, 4,000 out of 8,000. Acceptable losses by military standards. Human unit, fall back to secondary position, she ordered. Tejo's voice came through the comm. Negative, we are holding. That is not a request, Captain. Fall back now. With respect, Commander. We are staying. Velnara switched to visual feed from the eastern perimeter. What she saw made no sense. The humans were not retreating. They were advancing. Sergeant Dong Hyun led his squad straight into the swarm breach. They moved in small groups, firing and dodging. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their bare hands. Velnara watched a human soldier get grabbed by a swarm warrior. Instead of dying, the soldier wrapped his arms around the creature and detonated a grenade. Both of them exploded in a ball of fire. What are they doing? Velnara whispered. Fighting, Tejo said calmly. He stood beside her now, watching the same display. Your way saves some people. Our way saves all of them. Your way will kill all of you. Maybe, but the mission is not keeping us alive. Commander, the mission is keeping them alive. He pointed at the civilians, still running toward the evacuation ships. On the display, Dong Hyun fought, surrounded by 6 swarm warriors. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. Any sane soldier would surrender or retreat. Instead, Dong Hyun pulled a proximity mine from his belt and smiled. The explosion was massive. When the smoke cleared, Dong Hyun was still standing. His left arm hung at a wrong angle, clearly broken. His armor was cracked open, showing burned skin underneath. He picked up his rifle with his right hand and kept shooting. Lieutenant Hae-won ran to him, carrying medical supplies. She worked on his arm while he continued fighting, like this was completely normal. Your soldier needs immediate evacuation, Velnara said. Dong Hyun does not leave until the job is done, Tejo replied. He will die. Probably. He knows that. He does not care. Velnara felt her scales tighten with anger and something else. Something she did not want to name. The human unit held the breach for 12 more minutes. 12 impossible minutes where they should have died but somehow did not. They fought with broken bones and bleeding wounds. They fought when their weapons ran out. They fought when logic said fighting was pointless, and they held the line. The last evacuation ship lifted off carrying the final group of civilians, 8,000 people, all of them. 0 losses. All civilians evacuated, the fleet commander announced. All units, retreat immediately. The coalition forces pulled back in good order, following standard doctrine. Velnara's unit moved to their transport ships with minimal casualties. The human unit was the last to retreat. When they finally boarded their transport, Velnara counted them. They had landed with 48 soldiers. 31 came back, 17 dead, 35% casualties. No coalition unit had ever accepted those losses. It was unthinkable. Back on the flagship, Velnara went to the medical bay. She found Dong Hyun lying on a bed while Hai Wan worked on his arm. The bone had been set, but he would need surgery. "Why did you do that?" Velnara asked him. Dong Hyun looked at her with tired eyes. "Do what?" "Stay. Fight. You could have retreated, saved your own lives." "Could have," Dong Hyun agreed. "But then people would have died. Some people die in every battle. That is reality. Maybe for you." Dong Hyun tried to sit up and winced. "For us, every life matters. We learned that the hard way. By almost destroying yourselves." Yes, he did not deny it. "We spent thousands of years killing each other. Wars everywhere, for everything. We got very good at it. Too good. We almost ended our own species several times." Velnara sat down on a nearby chair. "So you learned to value life?" "No." Dong Hyun shook his head. "We learned that if you are going to fight, fight for something that matters, not for land or money or pride, for people, for the ones who cannot fight for themselves. That is why you charge into certain death." Dong Hyun laughed, then stopped because it hurt his broken ribs. "Commander, we do not charge into death. We charge despite death." "Big difference." "I do not understand." Haewon spoke up while injecting Dong Hyun with pain medicine. "Every human on that battlefield was scared, Commander, terrified. We all knew we might die. But you went anyway. Because being scared is not a reason to stop. It is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. It does not tell you what to do about it." Velnara thought about this. In Quilarian culture, fear was a signal to be cautious, to calculate risk, to preserve oneself, but humans seem to treat fear as just another piece of data. "I need to speak with Captain Taeho," Velnara said. She found him in his quarters, reviewing casualty reports. His face was sad as he read each name. "You lost 17 soldiers today," Velnara said. "I know. I will write letters to their families tonight." "Was it worth it?" Taeho looked up at her. 8,000 people are alive because 17 people died. You tell me, Commander, what is the mathematics of that? Coalition doctrine would say you wasted resources. And what do you say? Velnara was quiet for a long moment. "I say I do not understand you. Any of you. You fight like you have no fear. But I see fear in your eyes. Then you see correctly." Taeho stood and walked to a viewport. "Want to know a secret, Commander? Humans are not brave. We are the most scared species in the galaxy. We spent our entire evolution being prey. Everything on our planet tried to eat us. We were not the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being clever and too stubborn to die. So you learned to ignore fear? No. We learned to use it. Fear makes you focused, alert, strong. It is like fuel. The more scared you are, the harder you fight." He pulled up a holographic display showing battles from Earth's history. Velnara watched in growing horror. Humans fighting in frozen wastelands, in burning cities, in poisoned trenches, underwater, in space, against impossible odds, always fighting, always dying, always continuing. "This is what you are," Velnara said quietly. "This is what we had to become." Taeho corrected. "We did not choose it, but now it is who we are." Velnara returned to her quarters late that night. She lay on her sleeping platform and thought about what she had seen. The humans had saved everyone, every single civilian. Something coalition forces said was impossible, and 17 humans had died to make it happen. In Quilarian culture, that would be considered a failure. You should never lose that many soldiers in one battle. But looking at the 8,000 living civilians, Velnara wondered if maybe the humans understood something her people had forgotten. Some things were worth dying for, and maybe some things were worth being afraid for. The flagship orbited a dead moon while repairs were made. Velnara should have been sleeping. Instead, she sat at her personal console, reading files she was not supposed to access. Coalition policy discouraged studying human military history. Primitive warfare, the training manuals called it. Not relevant to modern combat. But Velnara could not stop thinking about what she had seen on Kepler 442b. The humans fighting with broken bones. Dong-hyun smiling as he detonated that mine. 17 dead to save 8,000. She started with recent human history. The files described wars on Earth that happened just 200 years ago. Humans fighting other humans with weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum pain. Chemical gas that burned lungs. Diseases released on purpose. Bombs that destroyed entire cities in seconds. And the humans had kept fighting through all of it. Velnara's hands trembled as she read casualty numbers. 60 million dead in one war, 20 million in another. Numbers so large they stopped having meaning. How was this species not extinct? A knock on her door made her jump. She closed the files quickly. "Enter," she said. A human walked in, young male wearing an engineering uniform. "Commander Velnara, I am Jin Woo, Human Engineering Corps. Captain Taeho asked me to deliver these repair schedules." Velnara took the data chip. "Thank you." Jin Woo started to leave, then hesitated. "May I ask you something, Commander?" "Go ahead." "Why were you reading about human wars?" Velnara's scales flushed with embarrassment. "How did you know?" Jin Woo smiled. "You have that look. Everyone gets it when they first learn about our history. Like you cannot believe we survived ourselves." "I do not understand your species," Velnara admitted. "You should have destroyed yourselves centuries ago." "We almost did, several times." Jin Woo sat down without asking permission, which was rude by Quillarian standards, but seemed normal for humans. "Want to see something interesting?" He pulled out a small device from his pocket. It looked like a simple tube with wires attached. "What is that?" Velnara asked. "Improvised explosive device. I can make it from materials found on any ship. Takes about 10 minutes. Velnara stared at him. "Why would you show me this?" "Because you are trying to understand us, and this is part of who we are. We have an entire category of warfare based on making weapons from random stuff. Fertilizer bombs, fuel bombs, even weapons made from kitchen chemicals." "That is terrifying." "Yes," Jinwoo agreed cheerfully, "but also useful. Humans learned a long time ago that you do not need fancy equipment to fight. You just need creativity and desperation." He stood up to leave. "By the way, Commander, the files you were reading, those are the sanitized versions. The real history is much worse." After he left, Velnara sat in silence. Much worse. How could it be worse than 60 million dead? The next day she met Mina, a human pilot. They were reviewing flight formations in the briefing room. "You have ejected from your fighter 11 times?" Velnara asked, reading Mina's file. 12 now. Had another one last week during the Kepler battle." "And you still fly?" Mina looked confused. "Of course. Why would I stop?" "Because coalition pilots are grounded after one ejection. The psychological trauma is considered too severe." "Oh," Mina thought about this. "I guess we do not think about it that way. Ejecting means you survived. That is good, not bad." Velnara tried to imagine ejecting from a fighter 12 times. 12 times watching your ship explode. 12 times floating in space waiting for rescue. The fear alone would break most species. But this human woman just smiled and kept flying. That evening, Captain Taeho requested a meeting. They sat in the observation lounge, watching stars drift past. You have been researching us, Tejo said. Yes, I hope that is acceptable. It is. Better to understand your allies. He was quiet for a moment. What have you learned? That humans are either insane or the bravest species in the galaxy. I have not decided which. Tejo laughed. We are neither. We are just scared. You keep saying that. But I saw Dong Hyun fight with a broken arm. I saw your soldiers charge into certain death. That is not fear. That is courage. No, Commander. That is fear pushing us forward, not holding us back. Tejo leaned forward. Every human in this fleet is terrified. We all know we might die. We feel that fear every single day. Then why fight? Because fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. It does not tell you to stop. Our ancestors learned that millions of years ago when they were being hunted by animals with bigger teeth and claws. They were scared, but they fought anyway. And slowly, they stopped being prey. By becoming predators. By becoming survivors. Tejo pulled up a holographic image. This is a human child learning to walk. Watch. The child stood up, took 2 steps, and fell down, started crying. Most species would stop there, Tejo said. The child is hurt. The child is scared. Natural response is to stay on the ground where it is safe. The child in the video stopped crying, stood up, tried again, fell again, and kept trying. We teach our children from birth that falling down is not failure. Staying down is failure. You get up, you try again. You keep trying until you succeed or you die trying. Velnara watched the child finally take several steps without falling. It looked so proud. This is why you do not retreat, she said quietly. Why you do not calculate acceptable losses. Because stopping is not in your nature. We stop when the job is done or when we are dead. Those are the only 2 options. That is, Velnara searched for the word. Terrifying. Yes, Tejo smiled. Now you are starting to understand. He stood up and walked to the viewport. Commander, you asked me once why we fight the way we do. I will tell you the real reason. It is not courage. It is not honor. It is guilt. Guilt? Humans spent thousands of years killing each other. We got very good at war. We developed weapons that could end all life on our planet, and we almost used them. Multiple times. We stood on the edge of extinction and looked down into the void. His voice grew sad. We killed billions of our own people. Over land, over resources, over ideas and gods and differences that seem so small now. And when we finally stopped, when we finally looked at what we had done, we made a promise. What promise? Never again. Never again would we waste lives on meaningless wars. If humans are going to fight and die, it will be for something that matters. For protecting those who cannot protect themselves. For saving every life we can. Tejo turned to face her. 17 humans died on Kepler 442b. That hurts. I knew all of them. I wrote letters to their families. But 8,000 civilians lived. 8,000 people who will have children and grandchildren. All because 17 humans decided some things are worth dying for. Velnara felt something strange in her chest. A tightness. An ache. You fight like this to make up for your past. We fight like this because we know what we are capable of. We know how easily we can destroy. So we choose to protect instead. And we do not stop until everyone who can be saved is saved. An alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Both of them rushed to the command center. Admiral Krethzon was already there, looking at the tactical display with all 4 eyes wide with fear. What is it? Velnara asked. The Void Swarm. They have found the refugee fleet. Velnara's blood went cold. The refugee fleet carried 40,000 civilians, people evacuated from destroyed worlds, the last survivors of a dozen species. How many swarm ships? Tae-ho asked. 8 fleet carriers, 600 support vessels, approximately 200,000 warriors. The command center went silent. Everyone did the same calculation. The coalition fleet had 75 ships and maybe 15,000 soldiers. They were outnumbered 8-1. Standard doctrine, the admiral said quietly. We will hold for 2 hours. Evacuate as many civilians as possible. The rest. He did not finish the sentence. Everyone knew what happened to the rest. How many can we save in 2 hours? Velnara asked. Maybe 20,000. 30 if we are very fortunate. 20,000 out of 40,000. Half of them would die. Acceptable losses. Velnara looked at Tae-ho. He was staring at the display with an expression she had seen before. The same expression Dong-hyun had right before he detonated that mine. Captain Tae-ho, the admiral said, you will command the rear guard. Hold them as long as possible. Yes, sir. But I request permission to propose an alternative plan. There is no alternative. The mathematics are clear. The mathematics are only clear if you accept that some people must die. The admiral's eyes narrowed. Captain, we must be realistic. Realistic? Tae-ho's voice was quiet but sharp. Admiral, my people sent 6 billion of themselves to early graves being realistic. We learned a long time ago that realistic is just another word for giving up. What are you suggesting? Tae-ho pulled up a tactical map. We do not hold them for 2 hours. We board their ships and destroy them from inside. The command center erupted in protests. Boarding Void swarm ships was suicide. Everyone knew that. Captain, that is madness, the admiral said. Yes, Tae-ho agreed. But it is also the only way to save everyone. All 40,000 of them. Velnara looked at the plan. It required soldiers to breach enemy ships, fight through hordes of swarm warriors, and plant explosives on their command systems. Survival rate, 3%. The human contingent volunteers, Tae-ho said. We will need approximately 6 hours. Can you protect the civilian fleet that long? If you cripple the swarm fleet, yes. But, Captain, this plan will kill all of you. Probably. Tae-ho looked around the command center. But 40,000 civilians will live. That is the mission. That is all that matters. Velnara felt that strange tightness in her chest again. She thought about everything she had learned, about humans falling down and getting back up, about fighting despite fear, about guilt and promises and never again. And she understood. Finally, she understood. The human contingent will not go alone, Velnara said. Her voice surprised her with its strength. My special forces will join them. Everyone turned to stare at her. Commander, you cannot... The admiral started. I can and I will. Captain Tae-ho is correct. Some things are worth more than survival. She looked at Tae-ho and saw respect in his eyes. Welcome to the real war, Commander, he said quietly. I am terrified, Velnara admitted. Good. Now we can begin. Velnara stood in the armory, checking her weapons for the 3rd time. Her hands would not stop shaking. Around her, 47 Quilarian Special Forces soldiers prepared for the mission. They had followed her orders without question, but she could see the fear in their eyes. Good, she thought. Fear meant they understood what they were about to do. Captain Tae-ho entered the armory. Behind him came Sergeant Dong-hyun, his broken arm now in a medical brace. The stubborn human had refused to stay behind. Final briefing in 5 minutes, Tae-ho said. Commander, may I speak with you privately? They walked to a quiet corner of the armory. You do not have to do this, Tae-ho said. My people volunteered knowing what it meant. Yours did not. I gave them a choice, Velnara replied. Every soldier could refuse. None did. Because you are their commander. They follow you, and I follow what is right. Velnara looked at her shaking hands. For 800 years, my people prided themselves on never losing. We preserved our forces, we calculated risks, we survived. But we never asked ourselves what we were surviving for. She met Teho's eyes. 40,000 civilians, families, children, people who cannot fight for themselves. That is what we survive for. You taught me that. Teho nodded slowly. Then let us make sure we give them every chance to live. The final briefing was quick. 12 teams would board 6 swarm carrier ships. Each team had a mixture of human and Quilarian soldiers. Their mission was simple: reach the command deck and plant explosives. Time limit, 6 hours. Expected survival rate, 3%. Velnara led Team 1 alongside Dong-hyun. When the team assignments were announced, she saw her soldiers react. Some looked honored, others looked terrified. Lieutenant Haiwan passed out medical supplies. Pain suppressors, she explained. When you get injured, and you will get injured, inject these. They will keep you fighting for another hour. A young Quilarian soldier named Kethra raised his hand. What happens after an hour? You probably die, Haiwan said matter-of-factly. So make that hour count. The transport ships launched 30 minutes later. Velnara sat strapped in her seat, watching the Void swarm fleet grow larger on the view screen. 8 massive carrier ships, each the size of a small moon, hundreds of smaller vessels swarming around them like insects, 200,000 enemies, against less than 3,000 boarding troops. Madness. Complete madness. Dong-hyun sat beside her, cleaning his rifle with one hand. First time? He asked. First time doing something this stupid? Yes. He grinned. Gets easier after the first dozen times. Do you ever stop being scared? No, but you stop letting fear make your decisions. He looked at her with those scarred eyes. Fear is just your body preparing for action. Faster heart rate, better reflexes, sharper senses. It is your friend, not your enemy. The transport shook as enemy fire struck the shields. 2 minutes to boarding, the pilot announced. Velnara activated her helmet and checked her weapon one last time. Around her, soldiers did the same. Humans and Quilarians working together, preparing to do the impossible. Listen up, Dong-hyun called out. When those doors open, we move fast and hard. No stopping. No thinking, just fighting. We get to that command deck or we die trying. Those are the only 2 options. Everyone clear? Clear! The soldiers shouted. Velnara added her voice to theirs. For the first time in her military career, she was going into battle knowing she probably would not come back, and she was going anyway. The transport slammed into the swarm carrier's hull. Cutting torches burned through the metal. Alarms blared. Then the boarding door exploded open. Go! 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 Dong-hyun roared. Velnara charged through the breach into hell. The swarm carrier was a nightmare of dark tunnels and organic walls. Thousands of warriors waited inside. They came at the boarding teams from every direction. Velnara fired her weapon until it overheated, switched to her backup. Fought alongside humans who screamed and laughed and died. A swarm warrior grabbed her from behind. She stabbed it with her combat knife and kept moving. Command deck is 3 levels up, Dong-hyun shouted over the sound of gunfire. Keep pushing! They fought through corridors slick with blood, both human and alien. Velnara saw a Quilarian soldier named Telvik go down under 4 swarm warriors. He detonated a grenade, taking them all with him. 7 soldiers became 6, then 5. A human named Kyung-soo lost his leg to a swarm blade. He pulled himself against a wall and kept shooting until his ammunition ran out. Then he detonated his remaining explosives, collapsing the tunnel behind them and buying the team precious seconds. 5 became 4. Velnara's armor was cracked in 3 places. She bled from wounds on her arm and side. The pain suppressors kept her moving, but she knew she was dying slowly. They all were. 2 more levels, Dong Hyun called. His medical brace was gone, his broken arm hanging useless. He fought one-handed, somehow still killing more enemies than anyone else. They reached a massive chamber filled with swarm warriors. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "We will never make it through that," Kethra said. Dong Hyun studied the chamber. Then he smiled that terrible smile. "Yes, we will." He pulled out all his remaining grenades and mines. "I will clear a path. You run. Do not stop. Do not look back. Just run." "That is suicide," Velnara said. "Yes." Dong Hyun handed his rifle to another soldier. "But someone has to do it, and I am already dead anyway. This broken arm got infected an hour ago." He showed them his arm. The skin was turning black. "Dong Hyun," Velnara started. "No time for speeches, Commander. When I blow the first mine, you run. That is an order." He looked at each of them. 40,000 civilians are counting on us. Do not let them down." Before anyone could argue, Dong Hyun charged into the chamber. What happened next would stay in Velnara's memory forever. Dong Hyun moved through the swarm warriors like death itself. He threw grenades, detonated mines, used his one good arm to grab enemies and drag them into explosions, and he laughed the entire time. "Now!" someone shouted. The team ran. Through the opening Dong Hyun had created, through the corridor of fire and death. Behind them, they heard one final massive explosion. Dong Hyun was gone. 4 soldiers became 3. They reached the command deck, a massive room filled with organic machinery and hundreds of swarm defenders. The central control node pulsed with sickly green light in the middle of the room. "Plant the charges!" Velnara ordered. They fought their way forward. Kethra fell with a swarm blade through his chest. The human beside him grabbed the explosive charges and kept going. 3 became 2. Velnara and one human soldier named Young Soo reached the control node. They started placing explosives while fighting off attackers with their free hands. Young Soo took a hit to his stomach, kept working. Another hit to his shoulder, still working. "Timer set," he gasped. 6 minutes. "Can you walk?" Velnara asked. "No." Young Soo smiled with bloody teeth. "But I can buy you time." "Go." "I am not leaving you." "Commander, one of us has to survive to tell people what we did here. That is you. Now go. That is an order from a dying man." Young Soo pushed her toward the exit. Then he turned to face the approaching swarm warriors with empty hands and a smile. Velnara ran. She did not know how she made it back to the breach point. Her body was on autopilot, running, fighting, bleeding. The pain suppressors had worn off and every movement was agony. She reached the transport ship. Only 3 other soldiers had made it back, 3 out of 48. "Charges planted," Velnara gasped into the comm. "Get us out of here." The transport pulled away from the carrier. Around them, other transport ships were doing the same. Some made it, many did not. "Detonation in 30 seconds, someone announced. Velnara watched through the viewport as 6 swarm carriers lit up with internal explosions. The massive ships began to break apart, spilling warriors into space. "We did it," one of the surviving soldiers whispered. But Velnara could only think of the dead. Dong Hyun charging into certain death with a laugh. Young Soo standing alone against hundreds. All the soldiers who would never go home. "Civilian fleet is escaping," Taeho's voice came through the comm. "All 40,000 civilians, 0 losses." 0 civilian losses. Velnara looked at the casualty reports coming in. The human contingent had sent 2,400 soldiers. Less than 200 survived. The Quilarian Special Forces had sent 400. 8 came back, including her. "Commander Velnara, are you injured?" someone asked. She looked down at herself. Blood everywhere, cracked armor, wounds on her arms, legs, and chest. "Yes," she said quietly, "but I am alive." And somehow that felt wrong. How was she alive when so many had died? Better soldiers, braver soldiers, They should have survived, not her. "Commander, we are approaching the medical bay," the pilot said. As the transport docked, Velnara saw something through the viewport that made her breath catch. The 40,000 civilians. They were in ships all around the fleet. Safe, alive, families holding each other, children who would grow up because soldiers had died. And she understood what Young Su meant. Someone had to survive to tell the story, to make sure people remembered what the dead had sacrificed. Lieutenant Hei-Wan met her at the airlock. "Commander, you look terrible. I feel worse. Then let us fix you up. We have work to do." "Work?" Hei-Wan smiled sadly. "Someone has to write letters to the families. Tell them their loved ones died saving 40,000 lives. Tell them it mattered." Velnara nodded. Yes, that was work worth doing. Because Dong-Hyun had been right. Some things were worth dying for, and 40,000 lives were definitely worth it. Velnara woke up in the medical bay 18 hours later. Every part of her body hurt. The doctors had repaired most of her wounds, but the deep ones would leave scars. Good. She wanted the scars. They would help her remember. A nurse came by with medication. "How are you feeling, Commander?" "Like I died and came back." "You almost did. 3 times during surgery." The nurse checked her monitors. "You have visitors waiting. Should I send them away?" "No. Let them in." Captain Taeho entered first, followed by Lieutenant Hei-Wan. Both looked tired with dark circles under their eyes. "Commander," Taeho said quietly, "it is good to see you awake." "How many?" Velnara asked. She did not need to explain what she meant. Final count. Human forces lost 2,180 soldiers. Quilarian Special Forces lost 392. Taeho's voice was heavy. "But all 40,000 civilians escaped, every single one." Velnara closed her eyes. Over 2,500 dead. The numbers should have felt abstract. Instead, she could see their faces. Dong-Hyun laughing as he charged, Young Su smiling with bloody teeth, Kethra falling with grace. "The Coalition Council wants to speak with you," Hei-Wan said. "There is talk of a court-martial." "For what?" "Disobeying orders, taking unauthorized risks with military assets." Velnara laughed, then stopped because it hurt her ribs. "Military assets. Is that what we are?" "That is what the council thinks." Taeho's expression was dark. "They are angry that we saved everyone instead of accepting acceptable losses. They say we were reckless." "We were reckless," Velnara agreed. "We charged into impossible odds. We died in huge numbers. By every military standard, what we did was wrong." She looked at both of them. "And I would do it again, every time." 3 days later, Velnara stood before the Coalition Council. Her body was still healing, but she refused to appear weak. She wore her dress uniform with her combat medals and the new scars visible on her scales. Admiral Krethzon spoke first. "Commander Velnara, you are charged with gross insubordination, reckless endangerment of coalition forces, and unauthorized deviation from combat doctrine. How do you plead?" "Guilty," Velnara said simply. "To all of it." The council members shifted uncomfortably. They had expected her to defend herself. "You admit you disobeyed direct orders?" another council member asked. "Yes. I was ordered to accept the deaths of 20,000 civilians. I chose not to." "You risked the entire Special Forces division." "I did, and I would do it again." "That is madness." The council members' scales flushed with anger. "Military forces cannot function if commanders simply ignore orders they dislike." "Then perhaps the orders are wrong," the chamber erupted in angry voices. The council demanded she be stripped of command, imprisoned, made an example of. Then Captain Taeho stood up. "Permission to speak," he said. "Captain, this is a coalition matter." Admiral Krethzon started. And humans are part of the coalition now, which means we get a voice. Tejo walked to the center of the chamber. You want to punish Commander Velnara for saving 40,000 lives. Let me tell you what will happen if you do that. He activated a holographic display showing the human fleet. Every human ship will immediately withdraw from the coalition. We will take our soldiers, our weapons, and our willingness to die for others, and we will leave. You would abandon the galaxy? A council member asked. No, we would abandon you. There is a difference. Tejo's voice was cold. We did not join the coalition to follow orders. We joined to save lives. Commander Velnara is the first coalition officer who understands that. She is the first one who fought like us, who was willing to risk everything to save everyone. He turned to face the council directly. You asked earlier why humans fight the way we do. It is because we are the only species that had to fight ourselves. We know what we are capable of. We spent thousands of years killing each other. Billions died. We almost ended our own species multiple times. The chamber was silent now. We learned something from all that death, Tejo continued. We learned that survival is not enough. Living is not enough. What matters is what you live for, what you are willing to die for. And we decided that if humans are going to keep killing and dying, it will be for something that actually matters. He pulled up images of the 40,000 civilians, families, children, the elderly. These people matter. Every single one of them, not 60%, not 70%, all of them. And Commander Velnara understood that. She fought beside us because she believed for the first time in her life that some things are worth more than survival. Pretty words, Captain, Admiral Krethzon said. But wars are not won with emotion. They are won with logic and strategy. Really? Tejo smiled without humor. Then explain why you are losing. You have better technology than the Void Swarm. More ships. Better training. By every logical measure, you should be winning. But you are not. You are retreating, giving up systems, accepting losses. He pointed at Velnara. She won. She saved everyone. Yes, it cost many lives. But those soldiers died knowing they mattered, that their sacrifice saved 40,000 people. Can you say the same about all the soldiers you have lost following your logical strategies? The council had no answer. Tejo walked back to his seat. Court-martial her if you want. But know that you will lose more than one commander. You will lose the only ally willing to fight the way this war needs to be fought. The council deliberated for 6 hours. Velnara waited in her quarters, writing letters to the families of her fallen soldiers. She had learned this from the humans. Each death deserved to be honored. Each sacrifice deserved to be remembered. She was finishing the letter to Kethra's family when the summons came. Back in the council chamber, Admiral Krethzon looked tired. Commander Velnara, the council has reached a decision. You will not be court-martialed. Velnara felt relief wash over her. However, the Admiral continued, you are hereby removed from command of the Quilarian Special Forces. The relief vanished. Instead, you are promoted to the rank of Battle Commander and given leadership of a new unit, the Coalition Special Operations Division. This unit will consist of both human and coalition forces and will operate under special authorization to deviate from standard combat doctrine when necessary. Velnara stared at him. They were promoting her? For disobeying orders? The council has reconsidered its position, the Admiral said carefully. The human combat doctrine, while unorthodox, has proven effective. We believe a mixed unit could provide valuable tactical options. Translation. They were scared the humans would leave, Velnara thought, but she did not care about the politics. She cared about the mission. I accept, she said. 2 weeks later, Velnara stood in front of her new unit, 300 soldiers, half human, half from various coalition species. They looked at her with a mixture of respect and fear. I will not lie to you, Velnara began. This unit will face impossible missions. We will be sent into situations where victory seems unlikely. Many of you will die. She paused, looking at each of them. But every mission will matter. Every life we save will count. We will not accept losses. We will not leave people behind. We will fight until the job is done or until we are all dead. Those are the only two options. A young Quilarian soldier raised his hand. Commander, is it true you fought like a human? Velnara thought about Dong Hyun charging into death with a laugh. Young-Soo staying behind to buy her time. All the brave, crazy, terrified humans who fought despite their fear. Yes, she said, and I am still afraid. But now I understand that fear is not weakness. Fear is your body preparing you to do something difficult, something necessary, something that matters. She gestured to the memorial wall nearby. Names were etched into it, 2,180 human names, 392 Quilarian names, and more being added every day. Every name on that wall represents someone who decided that some things are worth dying for. Someone who looked at impossible odds and charged forward anyway. Someone who felt fear and used it as fuel instead of letting it stop them. Velnara touched the wall gently. Her fingers found Dong Hyun's name. We honor them by continuing their mission, by saving everyone we can, by never accepting that some people must die when we can save them all. Captain Tae-ho stepped forward. He had been standing at the back of the room. The humans have a saying, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. It means that the bonds forged in battle are stronger than any other, that fighting for each other, dying for each other, creates something that cannot be broken. He looked at Velnara. Welcome to the war, Commander, the real war, not the one fought with logic and calculations. The one fought with courage and fear and stubborn refusal to give up. I have been in the war for weeks now, Velnara said with a slight smile. I am just now understanding what it means. A communication alert interrupted them. Admiral Krethzon's face appeared on the display. Commander Velnara, we have a situation. Void Swarm forces are attacking the mining colonies in the Arcturus sector. Estimated civilian population, 70,000. Coalition forces can reach them in 8 hours. We will save approximately 40,000. The old Velnara would have accepted those numbers. 40,000 saved out of 70,000. Better than nothing. Acceptable losses. But she was not the old Velnara anymore. Admiral, with respect, we will save all 70,000. My unit will deploy immediately. Commander, the mathematics do not account for soldiers willing to die for something that matters. We will find a way. She turned to her unit. 300 soldiers looking at her with determination in their eyes. Humans and Quilarians and others, all ready to charge into impossible odds. Gear up, Velnara ordered. We have 70,000 people to save. As the soldiers rushed to prepare, Tae-ho walked beside her. 70,000, he said. That is ambitious even for us. You taught me that the difference between impossible and possible is just how hard you are willing to fight. Velnara checked her weapons. Her hands were shaking again. Good. The fear meant she understood the stakes. Are you scared? Tae-ho asked. Terrified? Good. That means you are ready. They walked toward the transport ships together. Behind them, 300 soldiers followed. Ahead of them, 70,000 civilians waited, not knowing that their lives depended on a group of crazy warriors who refused to accept acceptable losses. Velnara looked out at the stars where the Void Swarm waited. The real fight was just beginning. They would lose more soldiers, face more impossible battles, charge into death over and over again. But they would save everyone they could. They would fight until the job was done or until they died trying. Because some things were worth more than survival. Some things were worth fighting for, even when you were terrified. Some things were worth dying for. And 40,000 saved civilians, soon to be 70,000, were proof that sometimes the impossible was just difficult. Velnara boarded her transport ship with Tejo beside her. The fear was still there, cold in her chest, but now she understood what the humans had known all along. Fear was not the enemy. Fear was fuel, and they had a galaxy to save.